Welcome, everyone. Glad to be together again here on our bi-monthly expansion calls. And I'm really excited to share some wonderful information about how we can continue to support our brains, our creativity, and manifestations in our life. So, welcome, and let's go ahead and get started. So, as always, we like to have an overview and focus on what we would like to expand upon in our life, grow, enrich, cultivate. And so, setting an intention has our conscious and unconscious mind focus on that. And then we'll do a quick assessment, like where we are in the here and now. And then we'll put it in a certain context. We'll apply some different approaches and techniques, and then we'll reflect on how that is for us. So it's always fun to check in initially. And in this moment, just say, hey, how am I doing? I'm curious about where I am right now. So, again, that energy level that we might call our life force, zeros neutral. And if we're feeling a little bit below energy or above. So, how is your life force? How is your mental focus and presence showing up right now? How about in your emotional body, your feelings? Those can come and go like the clouds in the sky. And how are your feelings resonating? And then, of course, our physical bodies, our bodies that are having that lived sense, that whole process of being in the human embodied reality. So these are all spectrums of how we're experiencing ourselves. And it's wonderful to kind of get some metrics and see what that is. So as you do that, we're going to go ahead and move forward and take our next step into how we've been looking at this whole orientation, which is growing our garden of life. And so we've been working at this foundational soil level. And then a lot of times we want to focus on our goals and visions. We're going to do a little bit more of that today. And then, of course, that's always juxtaposed to whatever kind of programming, limiting beliefs, traumas, or what we might call the weeds are currently growing in our garden of life. And I've loved working with this model in a more expansive way. So we've been down here in the soothing part, taking care of that sense of safety and calm and being cared for, and ways to increase the oxytocin and serotonin, all those wonderful mood regulators for our whole brain and particularly our limbic brain. And then we have been starting to bring on some lines, some perspectives on how to set goals and have drive, and part of that prefrontal cortex, activating the dopamine. And then, of course, doing it in relationship to how our cortisol levels, those stress hormones, might be functioning, or our perception of threat or overwhelm or unmanageable stress or things that we haven't been able to resolve, and being able to down regulate that and upregulate the hormones and the biochemistry so our brain's working at optimum function, so we're having the results that we want to have in our life. So we talked about this the last time, where Dr. Daniel Siegel has a great hand model for flipping the lid. So we had talked about the brain stem, right? This is that part of the wrist here. The autonomic functions of the body, our involuntary body actions, our respiration, our breathing, all of our digestion. And then we've been focusing on this limbic brain, right? That part that's folded in and giving it support so it has safety. That's that emotional brain. And so the brain stem and the limbic brain are all part of that fight flight. That's our survival mechanism. And sometimes when we freeze or fawn is where we keep trying to please others. We're always looking for their approval and trying to make them happy. And then when the fingers are over the thumb, that's that prefrontal cortex, right? Our executive function. So we've talked about when we get stressed, this limbic brain takes over and that prefrontal cortex literally like flips the lid. And I was working with a client the other day and she had used this model with her son. So she knew it for kids, but then she realized, oh, that's right. This happens to me too. I can flip my lid. So when we're looking at that in that context, a lot of what we've been doing is calming this limbic brain, right? And we started initially by learning vagus nerve activation, right? This 10th cranial nerve that comes through the head, all the way down the throat, all the way to the pelvic floor. So our review was stroking down our throats, rubbing behind our ears, being able to massage on the ears, coming into that ear canal, or floating up into the simba. So these all activate more parasympathetic rest and digest. Also, humming, whistling, or singing, that also the vibration is activating this vagus nerve that comes through here. Sometimes just putting a light little pressure on the eyes, and we've done some little bit of work with the optic nerve, can also begin to create a calming response. And then, of course, cold water on our face or drinking cold water can be a great way to activate that parasympathetic. And then we get more of that calming, safe oxytocin bonding. We're together, we're going to be all right, and the serotonin of what we might call like the happy neurotransmitter. So these are all reviews. We also talked about yawning. And slow mindful stretching and soothing touch supports that prefrontal cortex, our ability to think clearly. We get a little squirt of dopamine every time we yawn. It's a neuroregulator, and this can really help both with calming and regulating that stress response, but also then giving us some motivation and excitement to move forward in a really calm, supported way. And then we talked about psychosensory touch, kind of calming the ruffled feathers. Like, whoo, that was a lot going on. Let me just kind of reorient myself. Let me think this through again. So when we flip, we can't think it through. When we calm this limbic brain, that prefrontal cortex comes online. And so not only do we feel calm and safe, we start to have more clear thinking. We're more aware, we're in the present moment, and this is some beautiful work about the power of psychosensory touch in our neurological systems from the Dr. Rudens and Havening. So, what I've cracked up about, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, is our brains just have this negativity bias. And this is just the cutest cartoon because the heart, right, is saying, hey, brain, look at all the good. Life is wonderful. There's so much good. It's all stacked up. Let's take a moment. And our brains with the negativity bias goes, don't bother me, not now. Can't you see I'm busy? Focusing on everything that doesn't work, everything that's negative. So we've been learning ways to kind of shift. Sometimes we call it a pattern interrupt or shift tracks into what's working, what's beautiful, what's focused, what's calming. So then our prefrontal cortex, our creative imagination can move us forward in positive ways. And that's really kind of what these expansion calls are about, because we're always going to have to weigh a little bit of this negativity bias. Now, we can train our brains, and the cool thing is we have neuroplasticity, which means we can rewire. So the more we do something, it gets activated, it communicates to the surrounding neuroreceptor sites, and those things become new white weavings and webbings of interaction within our brain. Like one of the first calls I showed, like fabric getting woven, as things are woven together, one little strand isn't very strong, but the more it gets woven together, it creates a fabric, and that's really strong. So we're reweaving our brains to be able to listen to our hearts, acknowledge the good, and know that there's always going to be a negativity bias, but it doesn't run the show. So I'm so excited to share with you some research that came along quite some time ago, and it's called the Joy Center in our brain. Like, who knew that we actually had a center that activates this feeling of pleasure and the don't worry, be happy neurotransmitters like of serotonin? So I always love to use a reference of a brain, right? So here we have on our screen the septum pelliculum. Isn't that a mouthful? Septum pelliculum, right? So you can see where it is here, right? It's this section. So right underneath it is the limbic brain, and right above it is this mass of nerve cells, right? It's above the limbic brain, and it's directly below the corpus callosum. That's this red part. And it's this connection between the left and right hemisphere. So it's really important to know that we're getting a whole brain communication, and we can activate this septum pellucidum. And I want to teach you how to do it, and it's so cool. So we can actually on cue elevate our mood. And I'm going to bring up another model so we can kind of see where it is. So when we're looking here on ourselves, we can run our finger right up our bridge of our nose, about an inch or an inch and a half above our eyebrows. And you can see that when we get up here, more towards the hairline, is where that vantage point is into that joy center. And so we can come up and find it this way, can have a sense of coming down through the center of the brain. And what's great, use our left hand, because left prefrontal cortex is more about optimism and positivity. And then the field of energy coming from our left hand, if we float up and come to that spot just below our hairline, and you can imagine going in with your eyes closed, and then you can do like a little tap and imagine that you're touching that joy center. And you'll notice that maybe you get some of the same shifts you do with vagus nerve stimulation. There's a sense of yawning or relaxation, maybe even a feeling of swallowing, the breath maybe it's deeper, your diaphragm's relaxing. So just tapping or pulsing potentially with your left finger. You could also do a little bit of massage or movement, and knowing that you can go inside, even if you don't use your hand, you could go inside and imagine tapping on this part of the brain right above the limbic brain into that joy center and activate it. So there's been amazing research that has shown that intention here, awareness here, an intention to touch into it, tap into it, gives that feeling of and all is well. So that's one of our new clues and ways to work with expansion. And I want to take this also into what some of you might already be familiar with is some of the EFT or TFT, emotional freedom technique or thought field therapy, where there's other regulatory points that we can access, right? So there's one on the top of the head, there's one here in the bridge between the nose and the eyebrow to the side of the eye, under the nose, between the lip and the chin, and right down here on our clavicle. Now, a lot of people have been taught to tap these to clear negative emotions, and absolutely that can work. I also want you to know that you can touch them with intention and you can also rub them. And when we combine it with the yawns of the vagus nerve and focusing on something positive in our life or humming, all of these become neuroregulators and they're available to us at any time. So if we're feeling a negative emotion, we could even rub them and count backwards from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're literally doing a pattern interrupt and we're shifting our orientation. Now, most of the time, this work's been done to shift negative emotions or frustration. And I want to show you how, with this vagus nerve activation, with our joy spot, and these regulation touch points, we can enhance our goal setting and expand our creativity to really begin to create the things in our life that we're working on right now. So we used one of these mind maps last time when we were having positive past memories to kind of balance out the negative bias in the brain. And we were calling forward past experiences that felt good to us. And so that was kind of drawing upon the past to do a pattern interrupt and enhance neuroregulation and optimism to expand into our life. Now we're going to use this mind map for goals or outcomes. So if you have a piece of paper, I want you to just have at the center that intention of goals or outcomes, And then we're going to, like spokes of a wheel, fan out and create some intentions. So I put here more fun with family and friends now that we're getting out of our lockdown of COVID, increasing self care, more exercise and movement, right? Better sleep, opening up time for journaling ideas, and increasing self compassion. So, and then we could do relationship goals with family and friends. We could do career goals. So, there's so many ways we can go with a brain map and begin to identify areas that we want to expand, outcomes that we would like to have. So, take a moment and write down those goals, right? And maybe even some feelings or thoughts you have about it. And you might even notice sometimes as we do that, there'll be a limiting belief that might come up, or we might have a positive belief that comes up relative to that goal and that outcome. So take a moment and give yourself a chance to do that. Do a little bit of internal reflection. What would I like to expand on? What goals, what outcomes would I like to have? And again, as we bring intentionality and awareness, we're going to now use some neuroregulation and whole brain activity. So the achievement of these is a lot more integrated and a lot more available to us. Great. So while you're doing that, I'm going to offer up our next step. So if I do that first one, right, more fun with family and friends, right, we have more availability and access to be out in our lives. So I can look at that more fun with family and friends. I can look at it right now because it's on my screen. I could also put my finger on it if I've mind mapped it out on a piece of paper. I could put my finger on it and I could start by touching that joy spot, right? And really focusing on the joy of more time with family and friends, right? I could rub or touch my neuroregulation spots, right? Top of my head as I'm connected with that intention of more fun with family and friends. And I could work through all of these spots that are neuroregulators that are helping to integrate and resolve maybe some of the emotions or feelings about not having been able to be with them because of our experience here with COVID. And also what it would feel like and how good that would be. So we could use these neuroregulation spots as we focus on that first intention, more fun with family and friends. I could do vagus nerve stimulation and hum. I could yawn and stretch and do some psychosensory touch as I'm have my finger on that mind map on my paper or I'm looking with intentionality on my screen. I can look at that and I can do some psychosensory touch, ruffling my feathers of all the times I couldn't be with them and how good it feels to now be able to create as an outcome more fun with family and friends, right? So we can use all of these different techniques with our intentionality on one of our goals and outcomes. So I want you to take time and work your way around the wheel. So I'm going to go to the second one. I'm focusing on increased self care, right? I'm going to focus on my joy spot. I'm going to do some neuroregulation as I focus on increased self care. I'm going to yawn. Oh, we're going to stretch. I'm going to do some soothing touch. Oh, yes, I focus on more self care. Right, I'm going to move to the next one, right? More exercise and movement. So as I focus on that one, I'm going to stretch and yawn. I'm going to hum. Vagus nerve activation. I'm going to come to my regulation points, maybe clearing any resistance that I've had or disappointment that I had this last year that maybe I wasn't able to get as much exercise and movement. And I can now. This is one of my goals, one of my outcomes. So I can work through all of these regulating techniques to resolve and then begin to renegotiate and expand. Oh, better sleep. I'm going to focus on that one. Yawning, stretching, psychosensory touch. Yes, really having that intentionality. I can do these spots, regulating spots at the same time, regulating on both sides. Better sleep. That's my focus and intentionality. Better sleep, better sleep, better sleep. Oh, yawning and stretching. Mhm. I can go to my next one. Opening up time to journal, right? Write down creative ideas. Can come back to my regulating points. Which ones of those regulating points really feel like they're impactful for me? Oh yeah, there's that joy spot. Focusing on that joy spot. The joy of having time to journal and creative ideas, right? Getting into that parasympathetic rest and digest, my prefrontal cortex, my imagination is online, right? Supporting me in that best way. Oh, opening up time for journaling and ideas. So you've moved to one of your other goals and expansion points. Increase self compassion, right? So this is about values and virtues extended to myself, right? So psychosensory touch, really honoring myself, right? That is a goal, right? That is an outcome. Really feeling into that, using my regulation points, my joy spot, really imagining I'm tapping into that inside, coming into all of my points as I'm focused on increased self compassion, or if your fingers touching the goal or intention on your space, right? Ooh. Vagus nerve activation, massaging my ears with that increased self compassion. So I'm showing you that we can both shift our negativity bias, we can neuro regulate the stress response, coming into a sense of safety, connection with ourselves and others, and how that brings our prefrontal cortex, our imagination online, and we're really more neuro-regulated to be present. So now, after we've done that, and you touch into these intentions, right, goals and outcomes, and you look at that, how do you feel? How are your thoughts or beliefs different about that goal? Like, oh my gosh, that's so much easier, right? The disappointment of losses from last year are cleared, and I'm super present and excited to begin to step into these goals and intentions with ease, right? It's just simple, right? Oh, yeah, of course I'm doing that, right? It clears the blocks, it amplifies and expands our intentionality to move forward in these areas. So take a moment and just touch into those. How do those look different, feel different, sound different? How are you talking to yourself differently now that you've used some neuroregulation techniques in relationship to your expansion, right? Your goals and your intentions. Great. So it's always fun to do a check in and be curious about where we were when we started and where we are now. So, how is your life force? Have you noticed that that life force energy has gotten higher? Maybe your mental capacity and your intentionality for focus has increased. The emotional body, the feeling state, maybe is more neuroregulated. It's more in a flow state, right? Because emotions flow, ebb and flow. And how does your physical body feel? Is it potentially feeling more relaxed and present so it's got some energy? And it also has some grounding stability. So, noticing where that is within your body, mind, spirit, emotions after doing this exercise. And then let's take a moment and really put in some intentionality. What if we activate touching that joy spot, our ability to heal, right? Our ability to grow, our ability to renew, right? What does it feel like to know I have choice, right? I have agency. That's the empowered place, right? What it feels like touching these points, I choose to feel blessed. I choose to feel blessed. I choose to feel blessed, right? I choose to feel grateful. 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 Stretching and expanding into that gratitude, right? I choose to be excited, right? That's the life force energy. I choose to be excited. I choose to be excited. I choose to be excited. I choose to be thankful, right? I choose to be thankful. 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 I choose, oh, yeah, I choose to be happy. I choose to be happy. I choose to be happy. I choose to grow my capacity for good. I choose to grow my ability to heal, right? Using these neuroregulation spots to really empower our intentionality, our goals, and our outcomes. Beautiful. So, as always, I'm here in San Diego and I do work virtually and happy to connect and support anyone in individual sessions and classes as we keep expanding our ability to grow and heal and maximize the potential of who we are. And our next bi monthly expansion calls July 6th, right? So after the holiday weekend will be a good chance to get grounded in the here and now and take our next step forward and continue to grow. Excuse me, continue to grow and evolve our ability to heal and our intentions and the things that are important to us. So, thank you for joining in on the call today. And remember that all of these are our superpowers. They're innate to who we are. And as we know, we can check in with the joy spot and use these neuroregulation points. You know, they're just amazing. And knowing that that vagus nerve, autonomic nervous system is available for us any and all the time. So, blessings on your day and your week. And thanks for joining me. And I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Namaste. Take care. Thank you.